So before we start, this is going to be like a more essay style format, and I tried to do the YouTuber thing and, sit down in a nice corner of the room, use a proper camera on a tripod, but I am very out of practice because when I did so, it came out like this. They're very much a race of magical beings that are just very human adjacent. So in the interest of actually getting this out in time for the month, I have decided to just do my usual webcam format for this video. Hello everybody, my name is Alstroem, and if I'm uploading this on time, then it will still be June, which means it'll technically still be Pride Month. If it's July, then it's right after Pride Month. Naturally, this means we get an excuse to gay things up around here and talk about some fun stuff. Today, I have decided to test out a video essay kind of format of video so that we could talk about some queer Nintendo characters. Just disclaimer, do not consider this a comprehensive video covering any and all of the potentially queer Nintendo characters across their many IPs. That would take a lot of time. I'm simply going to talk about the ones that either you may already have heard about or are just ones that interest me personally. And listen, if there's something that I miss under this topic that you would have liked to have seen me talk about, leave it in the comments. I would love to learn more things. And by the extent of my limitations, that also means I'm not going to talk about Fire Emblem because I do not play Fire Emblem. So just get that out of your system. We're not talking about Fire Emblem. Also, another disclaimer, just assume that if you hear me mention a game, just assume I'm going to get into spoilers. Just assume. So, kicking things off, there are a couple of Mario Party videos on this channel, and in every single one of them, I tend to play as Birdo because I think Birdo's really cute. Birdo's a dinosaur, like a different type of dinosaur than Yoshi is.
But is the hole her mouth?
I think it is.
Wait, no, her mouth is under it. What the fuck is Birdo? Is the hole her mouth?
Seeing as that is the case, I think it's fair that we start with talking about Birdo. She made her debut in Super Mario Bros. 2 for the NES in 1998. In that game, she's just a mini-boss that would appear now and then. What was interesting, however, was what the manual had to say about her. Quote,
"He thinks he's a girl, and he spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta."
Now, given that this is a character that is stated to not identify with their assigned gender, that makes Birdo one of the earliest transgender characters in the history of video gaming. Birdo threw the first brick at Stonewall. Of course, however, upon being introduced, she is immediately misgendered and dead-named, so yeah, kind of interesting how Birdo is not her preferred name, but over the years, that's the name that stuck. Really quickly, because I didn't think to include this in the script for some reason, in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Birdo's trophy actually sees the game referring to her with it pronouns and acknowledging the gender thing, so just felt the need to point that out. Nintendo, being Nintendo, now only refers to Birdo with she/her pronouns and treats her as if she was a woman the entire time and almost never acknowledges what the manual in Mario Bros. 2 had to say. You could argue trans erasure because I have no doubt in my mind that Nintendo would rather treat it as if Birdo was just a cisgendered female, but I think it's a matter of perspective. I choose to look at it as Birdo finally being addressed and categorized the way she always wanted to be. So, I guess she came around on the name though. In 1994, EarthBound was released for the Super Nintendo. More info about that in this video. Given how off-the-wall and intricate EarthBound's plot is, it's no surprise that it decides to dip its toes into some LGBT representation. In Dwanette, the hometown of Ness, there is a kid in the treehouse. Talk to him and he says the following.
"You've grown since I last saw you. You're beginning to look like a man. You're so cool. I think I really like you. Well, you know what I mean."
Talk to him again, and all he says is,
"You know what I mean."
Now, call me crazy, because I am. I'm sorry, he was gay as hell. I remember I was like maybe 10 or so when I first played this game, And this character stuck with me because when I read what he had to say, I thought to myself, how would I feel if a guy said those words to me? And it broke my brain. As it turns out, my brain was easy to break in 2011. Now, in this game, there is another character that is worth talking about in this discussion because this character is pretty much universally accepted by the fandom as being gay, even though it's never directly stated. One of the main characters, Jeff, has to flee his boarding school to save Ness and Paula from... well, that. His friend and roommate, Tony, follows him around school as he gathers supplies and has Jeff use him as a step stool so that he can jump over the gate and escape. Now, let me say for the record that two guys can show affection for one another in a totally platonic context, despite what annoying people online will try to tell you. It's possible. That said, some of Tony's dialogue raises a few eyebrows. At least it did for me. An example is when the game tries to get the player's name. This is done under the guise of Tony giving you a phone call and saying he's gathering names for a school project. After you give your name, Tony says the following.
Don't put my friend Jeff in any dangerous situations, okay? I worry about him. I really do. Well, talk to you later. Jeff, I hope that I can see you again when you're feeling up to it.
This is followed up with Tony taking extra long to hang up, just to talk to Jeff a little while longer. The coup de grace for me is at the end of the game. As our heroes begin to go their separate ways, each member receives a letter from their loved ones. For Ness, his letter comes from his mom. For Paula, her letter comes from the kids at the preschool that her mom teaches at. For Jeff, his letter comes from Tony. The letter reads,
Dear Jeff, everything's really going great here. I wish I could have gone with you on your adventure, even just part of the way, but instead I'm sitting here, waiting for you in Winters. I want to see you again as soon as possible. I can't wait to see your cheerful face. I bet your glasses are dirty. If you come back, I'll clean them for you. Like I said, I'm waiting for you. Yours truly, Tony. P.S. Don't show this letter to anyone.
If you read the letter in front of Jeff, he simply remarks that Tony has a heart of gold. Now, if you ask me, Tony is very deliberately coded to be gay and in love with Jeff. And given the fact that Jeff's letter at the end of the game comes from Tony and not, say, his dad, who, for reference, is standing right fucking there, it just makes me wish that, like, you know, down the road, Jeff reciprocates Tony's feelings and they just, you know, run off and live this happy gay life together. No, I don't have a boyfriend, what gave it away. Fans just assumed Tony was gay, but it was pretty much confirmed when an interview with Marcus Lindbaum, one of the directors of the game's translation, was released for the Radio 64 podcast. He says, flat out, that Tony was meant to be gay.
I know that Itoi-san has said that that Jeff, well, not Jeff, but Tony is supposed to be a gay character.
Now, do I wish they could have been more direct about it? Yes. Do I wish we could have gotten a little bit more? Yes, but I think with what we have, there is enough subtext there that it adds that layer to Tony's character and to Jeff's overall plot, which I think is better off for it because it kind of makes things a lot more interesting, doesn't it? Okay, so in keeping with the EarthBound series, let's take a look at its sequel, Mother 3, super quick. More info on that game in this video. Look at me, I'm covering my bases here. In the game, there is a group of individuals referred to as the Magypsies. They're depicted as bearing masculine bodies and features, yet dressing and presenting in a way that's feminine. The game makes it clear that they're not humans in the same way that our protagonists are. They're a race of magical beings that are, let's just say, human adjacent. I've seen people online label them as just being flat out trans. I'm not sure if I'd go as far as to say that they're trans or even that they're just simply trying to be evocative of like drag or ballroom culture, but I kind of treated them, I treat them more as like beings that are assimilating into the society of the game, but in doing so are choosing to display very flagrant disregard for said society's gender norms. In any case, they are for sure camp and queer as hell. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of their role within the story of the game because that would kind of require me going over the entire story of the game. and that would take way too long. Just know that these guys are very important to the story. Now, as many people are aware of, Mother 3 was only released in Japan and has yet to be released in America, and some people online speculate that the Magypsies are part of the reason for why that happened. Now, the game did come out in 2006, and, you know, America in 2006, their relationship to queer people wasn't what it is now, let's just say. But honestly, there were a lot more prominent factors that played into the game not being released in America. Given how Nintendo's been moving when it comes to queer characters lately, I'm a little more willing to give them the benefit of the doubt here. You'll see what I mean later. Moving on, the next games that I wanted to highlight were Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. In these games, we have a trainer of particular interest. In the Battle Maison, there's a trainer named Beauty Nova. Upon entering battle, she states,
I've recently remade my life completely. I've been reborn as a beauty at last.
Once you defeat her, she says this.
Yes, a mere half year ago, I was a black belt. Quite the transformation, wouldn't you say?
For those out of the loop, when she says black belt and beauty, these terms are referring to different trainer classes. This is important to note because the trainer classes in Pokemon are very gender specific. She claims that she used to be a black belt. In the history of Pokemon, black belt trainers are always male. They have a female counterpart, Battle Girl, but she doesn't say she was a Battle Girl. And she says that she went from a black belt, which is a male trainer class, to a beauty, which is a female trainer class. They're always women. There's no male beauties. So, by way of semantics, this trainer just kind of talked herself into becoming the first trans character in the Pokemon games. It is kind of sad though that said groundbreaking character is so tucked away because you really got to go out of your way to fight her. But, you know, we take those. And truthfully, in more recent years with Pokemon, they've been a little more lenient when it comes to showing queer characters. In the latest games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, one of the Team Star admins is, in my opinion, pretty much just gay. I mean, he's into designing clothes, he gets made fun of because he dresses different. Obviously, Pokemon's never going to be that direct about it, but, you know, worth mentioning. Now, going to about a decade before Pokemon X and Y came out, I want to now talk about Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door. The game originally came out in 2004 for the Nintendo GameCube and was recently remastered and re-released on the Switch. And that re-release is actually the inspiration for this video. Now in the game, Mario gains several colorful and complex party members, but the most interesting one out of all of them, and the one we're going to be talking about for this video, is Vivian. Vivian starts out in the game as a member of the Shadow Sirens along with her sisters Marilyn and Beldum. Throughout the game, Beldum is very verbally abusive and manipulative towards Vivian, and she ultimately ends up defecting to Team Mario in Chapter 4. Now, among all of the interactions between Beldum and Vivian, chief among them in terms of interest comes in the Bogly Woods. As the sisters introduce themselves to Mario, Vivian addresses them as the Shadow Beauties. Beldum flips shit and corrects Vivian that their name is in fact the Shadow Sirens. She then remarks,
I don't see 3 beauties, I see 2. But then there's you, and you're plug ugly.
Now the reason why this is interesting is because in the Japanese version, what she actually says, roughly, is this.
We're the sisters. Aren't you a man?
And there are other instances throughout the original Japanese script where Vivian's gender kind of gets brought up as a point of contention. Now, given that this game was being translated for American release in 2004, any mention of this aspect to Vivian's character was completely wiped out of the game. One could argue that Beldum calling Vivian a man in the Japanese version was sort of meant to be more of an insult and not really indicative of anything going on with Vivian's gender identity. To that point, I say, look at the other versions of the game, because the other translations for the game do stay true to this plot point. Notably, if you read Vivian's bio in the Spanish version, it says this.
This former member of the Shadow Trio looks like a girl, but is actually a boy.
When it was announced that the game was going to get re-released for the Switch in 2024, a lot of die-hard fans were wondering if there was even a slight chance that Nintendo would revert the story back to the original intention and have Vivian be trans. Well, the game was released, and we have our answer. In the Bogby Woods, they're now going as the Three Shadows, with Vivian mistakenly referring to them as the Three Shadow Sisters. Vivian then says,
It makes me really happy when you call me your sister.
Then in chapter 4, when she's venting to Mario, she says this.
Truth is, it took me a while to realize I was their sister, not their brother. Now their usual bullying feels heavier.
And trust me, the Japanese version of the scene is a lot more blunt about it. So it seems that Nintendo of America had a change of heart and decided to put this part of Vivian's character back into the game. By principle, Vivian being transgender just makes her that much more interesting. But Vivian being trans also makes Beldam's character a little bit more interesting, because now we have a more clear reason as to why Beldam is so mean to Vivian. In the original version of the game, it's not as clear why Beldam's so mad at her all the time. It just kind of seems like it comes from nothing. But now we know why. She's transphobic as fuck. This kind of clarifies Beldam's motivations and Vivian's motivations, and it also just makes the story feel more complete, in my opinion. I think the game is better off for it. So, now that we have covered the queer Nintendo characters that I personally find interesting, let's try to reach some sort of conclusion to justify all this rambling. When it comes to consuming media, I tend to put my energy towards media that is operating within the realm of queerness. Ask me what my favorite Tyler the Creator album is, I'm gonna tell you it's Flower Boy. Ask me what my favorite anime is, and I'm gonna tell you it's episode 24 of Evangelion. As a gay man, I find art that highlights queer stories to be more engaging because it resonates with me on an emotional level. And trust me when I say, I am far from the only person that thinks like this. That feeling, that euphoric feeling of feeling like your art is relating to you, is why people are so adamant about diverse representation in media. It can make a world of difference to someone to see themselves represented in the media that they watch or the games that they play. Trust, I would have killed to have had a show like Heartstopper around when I was in high school. And even still, I have yet to find a video game that scratches the same itch that Heartstopper does, you know, just like a nice, wholesome slice of life type of vibe. I find the characters that I talked about today to be very fun and cool and interesting. I'm glad that Vivian gets to have her true story told, and I hope it's a sign of things to come from Nintendo when it comes to queer characters. It's also nice that the internet is seemingly really warm to the idea of Vivian being a trans character, as opposed to, you know, the kind of gamer that, let's say, melts down over pronouns in Starfield.
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
Cheers to all my fellow queers, and keep taking up space, because I live for these conservative tears. So that's been the video. This part is unscripted, so pardon me. But yeah, I wanted to try this sort of new essay format. I want to try and do more videos like this. So if you guys liked this, please let me know by leaving likes and comments. Before I ramble on for too long, I want to thank the people that read lines for the video. I want to thank Mama Luigi, who is another content creator and video essayist in, you know, obscure gaming media. And he actually has a video about Mario Brothers 2, so definitely check that out. It's a banger. I also make a cameo in his Gygas Theory video, so if you want to go support that, tell him I sent you. But huge shout out to him. I want to give a shout out to my friends Mika and Patricia. They read some lines in this video as well. And I also want to give a shout out to Alstroem Alchemist for reading the lines for Beldam. Thank you so much. Please send her some love, because she was able to get me those lines even though she was very much dealing with a cold. So thank you. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to start it off with something a little simple, nothing too crazy. It's a little hard for me to find the time to like do really intense research sessions, just because my life is a little hectic at the moment. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed this. I want to make more of these in the future. And yeah, that is it. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you later. Take care.
stop you.